Facing a midlife crisis? Find courage in everyday women's stories. Subscribe to Resilient Women Rising.
Knitting her way back. How a 46-year-old fired woman and her daughter built a steady business. Rain tapped softly on the windows of Brookside Supermarket where Sarah Andrews had worked for nearly 10 years. Shelving cans and scanning groceries wasn't glamorous, but it had kept the lights on for her family. At 46, Sarah never imagined that one gray Friday afternoon would upend everything. The store manager called her into the back office and handed her a pink slip. Sales were down, and management had to cut staff. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," he said quietly. "Your position is terminated, effective today." Her uniform hung in her hand like a burden. She drove home in a daze, heart hammering with fear mortgage and groceries loomed, and she had no backup plan. Her husband, Tom, sat at the kitchen table, head bowed over bills. His hair was flecked with gray around the temples. When Sarah placed the slip on the table, his head snapped up, worry etched in his features. "How will we manage?" he asked softly. They shared a tight embrace. Neither had savings beyond a few $100s, and Tom's part-time mechanic work barely covered fuel costs. Their daughter, Emma, was now a sophomore at a university 3 states away. Sarah remembered how Emma, growing up, had waited alone in the bleachers whenever her mother worked late shifts. Birthday parties were missed, parent-teacher conferences forgotten. By the time Emma enrolled in college, their relationship had frayed. Texts went unanswered, and video calls ended in slammed doors. Sarah carried that guilt and disappointment like a heavy blanket. For the next week, Sarah wandered through their small apartment, unemployed and unmoored. One evening, her knitting needles caught her gaze in the corner of the living room. She'd taught herself to knit at 16, her grandmother's old kit helping her through lonely nights after her younger brother was born prematurely. Over the years, she made hats and scarves for friends and family, each stitch a quiet joy. But she never saw credit in it. It was just something she loved. With nowhere else to turn, Sarah picked up her needles and began a simple pattern, a chunky ribbed beanie in charcoal gray. As she worked, Tom emerged from the garage, wiping oil from his hands. He watched her fingers loop yarn with practiced ease. "I forgot how skilled you are," he said. Sarah shrugged. "It's just a hobby." Tom reached into his pocket. "Our neighbor's newborn needs a hat. Make one. If she pays me a few dollars, that's something." Sarah gave a half smile and continued knitting. That weekend, Tom drove her to see Emma on campus. Their reunion was tense. Emma's eyes narrowed when she saw her mother's tired face. Sarah stammered apologies. "I know I missed so much." "I'm sorry." Emma crossed her arms. "Sorry isn't enough," she whispered. Before Sarah could reply, Tom interjected gently. "Your mother lost her job. She was saving for you, always." Emma hesitated, then nodded. "Show me what you've made," she said quietly. Sarah went home that night clutching a small charcoal beanie. Emma examined the stitches under her dorm room lamp and released a breath. "This is beautiful." Without another word, she opened her laptop and began snapping photos. Over the next hour, she built a simple storefront page and posted Sarah's work with captions highlighting her handmade process. "Hand-knitted merino beanies cozy. Durable, uniquely yours," Emma typed. Back home, they launched Stitched with Love by Sarah. Orders trickled in, first a neighbor, then 3 friends of friends, and soon a local college bookstore asked for a dozen hats to sell in its campus shop. Emma managed the shipping. Tom helped package orders in their cramped kitchen, and Sarah knitted into the late hours. Within 2 months, they were earning enough to cover the mortgage and live comfortably, each month a modest but life-changing sum. Sarah's worry over bills transformed into a steady rhythm of yarn and customer messages. As spring warmed their corner of the city, Sarah received an unexpected invitation, the weekend craft fair, where local artisans showcased their work. She hesitated, remembering her supermarket name badge and the fluorescent lights. Emma encouraged her, "They'll love your story." So they set up a small booth under a pastel canopy, displaying handcrafted scarves, beanies, and fingerless gloves in earthy tones. Patrons crowded around, complimenting Sarah on her skill. One boutique owner commissioned a line of custom sweaters for the fall, and a parenting blog wrote about a mother-daughter team turning passion into profit. That night, the three Andrews, Sarah, Tom, and Emma sat on their worn couch, breathing in the aroma of takeout dumplings. For the first time in years, their home felt full of hope rather than anxiety. Sarah's knitting needles rested on her lap as she reached for Tom's hand, and then Emma's. "Who would have thought," she whispered, "that losing my job would bring us closer and give us a chance to do something we love?" Tom squeezed her fingers. Emma smiled, leaning into her mother. And as rain tapped again on the windows, Sarah realized that redemption often came in unexpected stitches. 2 weeks after their triumphant appearance at the weekend craft fair, Sarah Andrews sat at her kitchen table with a hot mug of tea and a weary smile. Orders from their small online shop, Stitched with Love by Sarah, had more than doubled, steady enough now that they covered the mortgage and household expenses without dipping into savings. Yet a quiet tension tugged at Sarah's chest. Every evening she hunched over her yarn and needles while Tom held down 2 jobs and Emma juggled a full semester, plus the family business. They'd found success together, but the demands were relentless. One Monday morning, Sarah awoke to find a shipping notice from a regional boutique in North Carolina, requesting 50 hand-knit scarves for their fall collection. It was thrilling and daunting. 50 scarves represented nearly 3 weeks of non-stop knitting, pattern adjustments, and careful packaging. Her fingers ached at the thought, and yet she yearned to say yes. That afternoon, she sat down with Tom and Emma around the worn oak island in their kitchen. Tom rested his grease-stained overalls on the stool beside Emma's laptop. "Mom, you can do this," Emma said, scrolling through their email thread. "We'll set up a production schedule. I'll adjust my class load and handle customer service." Tom nodded. "I'll pick up extra shifts at the garage and ask my cousin if he can help with evening deliveries." Sarah's eyes filled with gratitude. Their willingness to sacrifice their own time for her craft reminded her just how far they'd come. By evening, they had a plan. Sarah would knit 4 hours each morning before breakfast, then pack each afternoon while Tom loaded deliveries into his truck after work. Emma, home from college for a spring break, would photograph each finished scarf, post updates on their social media, and manage inventory tracking with her phone's spreadsheet app. As Sarah settled into her knitting nook that night, the rhythmic clicking of needles felt both comforting and urgent, like a hurried heartbeat expressing hope. Over the next 10 days, the Andrews household fell into a new routine. At dawn, Sarah's needles flew through thick wool rope cables and ribbed edges forming the structure of each scarf. In the afternoons, Tom sorted skeins of yarn by color and size, labeling bins with neat stickers. In the evenings, Emma uploaded product photos and replied to customer inquiries with messages like, "Thank you for your order. This scarf is in the final stage of production." Despite the long hours, Sarah felt a sense of purpose she hadn't known since before the pink slip. Each row coming together reminded her that she was weaving a future for her family as surely as she wove the yarn. The day the final scarf boxed up for North Carolina shipped out, Sarah felt both relief and exhaustion. On the kitchen counter lay fresh skeins earmarked for new projects: fingerless gloves, beanies, and even a prototype sweater. Tom propped open the front door to catch a cool breeze, and Emma hovered by her laptop, eyes bright. "Mom, look," Emma said, pointing to her screen. A local news website had run a small feature, From Pink Slip to Knitting Phenomenon, how a midlife mother and her college-age daughter are warming the nation. The headline glowed in bold type, accompanied by a photo of Sarah cradling a newborn-sized hat in one hand and wearing her favorite gray cardigan. Sarah's cheeks warmed. She had survived so much exhaustion from endless shifts, guilt over the distance between her and Emma, and the fear that she'd lost her identity when her job vanished. Now, strangers across the country read their story and wanted to follow along. The article quoted Sarah, "I never believed my knitting could mean something more than a gift to a friend. But now, every stitch carries my hope for my family and myself." That night, they celebrated with takeout pizza and a bottle of cheap sparkling cider. Emma toasted to her mother, eyes shining. To Sarah the knitter who knitted us all back together. Tom raised his glass, adding, "And to our family stronger than ever." As spring melted into early summer, Stitched with Love continued to bloom. Orders trickled in from boutiques in Atlanta, Nashville, and even a small shop in Portland. Sarah experimented with new patterns, lacy shawls for cooler evenings, lightweight wraps for summer evenings, and cozy mittens for early fall. Each piece carried her gentle touch and the knowledge that people found warmth not just in wool, but in the story behind it. Yet success brought a new complication balancing family, business growth, and personal life. One Saturday, Sarah's birthday, Tom insisted she take the day off. She protested initially. There were scarves waiting to be sewn, but Tom gently took her hands. "Today, we celebrate you. Emma and I will run the booth at the farmer's market." Sarah hesitated, then allowed herself a rare moment of respite as she curled the last skein into a neat circle and locked her knitting basket away. That afternoon, the home felt achingly quiet without Sarah's needles clacking. Emma handled the farmer's market booth alone, while Tom helped lug display tables and set up pastel-colored canopies. Passers-by paused, admiring the neatly folded scarves, hats, and gloves. Emma smiled politely, answering questions and offering stories about her mother's craft first lesson at 16, knitting through lonely nights, and a pink slip that led to their family business. Tom assisted, handing out business cards with their website printed in soft script. By late afternoon, they cleared nearly half their inventory, 3 dozen items gone in 6 hours. As they dismantled the booth, Tom looked at Emma, pride in his eyes. "Your mom's talents are in good hands with you," he said. Emma nodded, my eyes glistening. "I just want her to know how much she means to us." When Sarah returned home that evening, she found the house freshly swept and a small cake on the table. Emma handed her a slice, and Tom offered a heartfelt birthday card. Tears pricked Sarah's eyes as she read Emma's words. "Mom, you taught me resilience. Here's to many more stitches and memories together." They spent the weekend breathing in family time. On Sunday afternoon, as Sarah knitted a pair of soft wrist warmers, Emma suggested they apply to a vintage craft fair in a nearby town in the fall. Sarah smiled, cradling her daughter's hand over her knitting. "We'll get there," she promised. And tonight, as the cicadas droned outside and the yarn basket beckoned, Sarah let herself believe that no matter what storms came, the bonds she knitted with her family and her craft would hold tight, one careful stitch at a time. As summer ripened into a humid July, the Andrews household buzzed with energy. Orders continued to flow steadily into Stitched with Love, and Sarah found herself waking at dawn to answer messages, measure yarn, and list new colorways on their website. Tom's garage schedule shifted. He spent afternoons tuning engines before heading home to help package parcels. Emma squeezed in phone calls between lectures and live stream sessions, promoting their newest lace wraps. Their lives felt full far beyond where they had been just months ago, but an undercurrent of tension began to emerge. One sweltering Saturday, Sarah sat on the front porch, knitting a lightweight shawl, when a FedEx truck rumbled down the street, depositing a large box on their stoop. Her breath caught as she recognized the boutique's name on the label, an upscale retailer in Chicago wanting 200 of her signature beanies for the holiday season. This was the biggest request, yet nearly 4 times their previous largest order. She smoothed her hands over the shawl but felt panic ripple through her fingers. Tom stepped out carrying a tray of iced tea. "What is it?" he asked gently. Sarah showed him the scan sheet. His eyes widened. That's amazing but overwhelming. We'll need help. Inside, she called Emma immediately. Emma listened, excitement lighting her face. Mom, we can subcontract to Mrs. Delgado down the block. She stitches sweaters she could handle, hat finishes. I'll coordinate payments. Relief washed over Sarah. Thank you, she whispered. Even with help, 400 extra stitches loomed like a mountain. Still, the thought of growing their reach sparked a fierce pride. Over the next 2 weeks, the Andrews home transformed. The living room overflowed with yarn bins of merino wool in jewel tones stacked to the ceiling. Tom converted their spare bedroom into a makeshift packing station, cutting boxes and taping them shut. Emma balanced her summer courses online with DMs from prospective customers asking when the new colors would drop. And Sarah knitted sometimes until her eyes blurred, hoping each stitch carried the same warmth her early buyers had praised. Then, halfway through production, a sudden problem arose. One of the yarn suppliers emailed due to a mill shutdown, "Your order of the charcoal blend is delayed by at least 2 weeks." This charcoal had been the best seller, nearly 40% of their previous sales. Sarah's heart sank. Without that shade, the Chicago retailer might cancel altogether. She pressed her hand to her chest, the afternoon air feeling stifling. For a moment, doubt whispered that perhaps they'd grown too fast. That evening, as cicadas droned beyond the screen door, Sarah gathered her family in the cramped kitchen. "Our biggest wholesale client expects charcoal beanies," she began, voice trembling. "The yarn is delayed. We might lose the order." Tom's jaw tightened. "What if we dye our own? I can help with small batches." Emma frowned thoughtfully. "I know a local dye shop owner who might let us rush a custom run, but we'd need fluff drying space and hands to manage color consistency." Sarah met their gazes, seeing their determination mirror her own. "Let's try," she said, exhaling a shaky breath. The next morning, they arrived at Dye and Do Laba small storefront behind a florist breathless and hopeful. The owner, Marisol, a tall woman with vibrant curls, listened intently. "I can fit you in this afternoon," she said, surveying the skeins with a practiced eye. "But after dye, wool needs at least 24 hours to rest and set." That left only 3 days until Chicago's shipping deadline. Time ticked faster. Back home, Sarah and Tom filled 5 laundry baskets with water and vinegar baths, rinsing skeins as they emerged from Marisol's dye vats. Emma documented each step, hashtags like behind the scenes, and grassroots knits popped onto their social feed. Customers flooded their comments. "We believe in you. Keep going." Marisol's dye run succeeded, but in that moment of triumph, another issue surfaced. The dyed yarn bled slightly, running a tint of charcoal into adjacent midnight blue skeins. Sarah's chest tightened. "We have to rewash everything," she said, voice low. As dusk fell, the family worked side by side, scrubbing and rinsing skeins late into the night. By midnight, the final bundle hung on makeshift drying racks, bed sheets draped over chairs, towels beneath every skein. Sarah's eyes burned with fatigue, but she refused to let exhaustion dampen her resolve. Emma hovered with her laptop, counting hours until they could begin knitting again. Tom, his palms raw from rinsing, offered tea and a gentle smile. In their shared exhaustion, Sarah felt the pulse of unity more strongly than ever. The next dawn's pale light revealed the dyed yarn in perfect charcoal shade, ready to become beanies that very morning. With the clock ticking, Sarah's fingers flew through loops. Tom sewed labels onto each hat, and Emma packed boxes, printing shipping labels and sending Emily's first care packages off to loyal supporters. By late afternoon, all 200 hats were boxed, sealed, and collected by the courier hours before the deadline. That evening, the Andrews home felt both electrified and spent. Sarah collapsed on the couch, the rhythmic click of her needles replaced by silence. Emma joined her, leaning into her mother's shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. Sarah nodded, tears slipping free. "You did it," she said to Emma and then to Tom. They shared a quiet, triumphant embrace. But the celebration was short-lived. At dawn, Sarah's phone buzzed with a new email Chicago retailer canceled order due to change in their winter line. "We're sorry." Her chest tightened again, this time with disbelief. All their sweat and late nights seemed undone by a single line on a screen. As sunlight filtered through their kitchen window, Sarah gripped her knitting needles and drew in a breath. The charcoal beanies, at this point, represented more than a piece of yarn. They embodied their collective sacrifice. And though disappointment pressed at her heart, she realized that the bond she'd woven with her family through every challenge and shared stitch could not unravel so easily. Sarah closed her eyes, letting the steady weight of her needles ground her. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The next step on their journey lay uncharted, but she would not stop knitting for hope. Summer's heat gave way to early autumn, and the Andrews household hummed with anxious excitement. Orders continued to flow steadily into Stitched with Love, and Sarah found herself waking before dawn to answer messages, measure yarn, and list new colorways on their website. Tom's garage schedule shifted. He spent afternoons tuning engines before racing home to sort yarn bins. Emma balanced her last semester classes with live stream sessions promoting their latest lace shawls. Their lives felt richer than ever, but an undercurrent of tension lingered. One crisp Tuesday morning, Emma bounded into the kitchen, her phone held high. "Mom, I just got off the phone with a podcast in Seattle. They want to interview us next week." Sarah froze, needles in hand. A national podcast could bring a deluge of new customers, but also a crushing wave of orders to fill. "That's incredible," she whispered, heart fluttering with both pride and panic. That evening, over a modest dinner of roasted vegetables and rice, they sketched out a plan. "You'll do the interview from here," Emma said, eyes shining. "I'll set up a high-quality video call." Tom nodded, lifting his mug. "I'll take notes on orders that come in." Sarah's chest tightened. This interview could catapult them to a new level, but could they handle the surge? Over the next 2 days, the Andrews family threw themselves into preparation. Sarah spent each morning knitting prototypes for the interview demonstration, showcasing a merino wool hat, a fingerless glove, and a draped shawl, while Tom converted their spare bedroom into a makeshift studio, stringing lights for soft, flattering illumination. Emma rehearsed questions and practiced her audio setup, even creating a simple slideshow highlighting their story supermarket cashier, pink slip mother-daughter business. On the day of the podcast, Emma positioned the laptop on a stack of textbooks, the camera capturing Sarah at her knitting nook. Across the country in Seattle, host Marie Donovan introduced them today on Hometown Heroes. We're joined by Sarah and Emma Andrews, who turned a pink slip into a thriving knitwear business. "Welcome!" Sarah's hands trembled, but Emma squeezed her shoulder and she took a deep breath. As Marie asked about life before the business, Sarah spoke candidly. "I was exhausted, working double shifts, missing my daughter's milestones. Knitting was my one solace." Emma nodded, adding, "I saw my mom struggle and thought, why not help her sell these beautiful pieces online?" Their honest, heartfelt answers resonated. When Marie inquired about overcoming challenges, Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she described dye spills, sleepless nights, and the constant fear of letting her family down. Listeners heard the crack in her voice and responded with an outpouring of support. By the end, Marie concluded, "Your story reminds us that resilience and love can transform any setback into success." As the mic went silent, Sarah exhaled, relief mingling with joy. Almost immediately, website traffic spiked. Orders poured in from Oregon, Texas, and beyond, requests for hats, scarves, and shawls. By dusk, 200 new orders awaited fulfillment. Emma's phone buzzed with notifications. "Just ordered 2 for my niece. Love supporting small businesses." Tom placed his hand on Sarah's shoulder. "We did it," he murmured. But as Sarah rechecked their yarn inventory, her heart sank. They were dangerously low on 2 key color blends. Over the next morning, they scrambled. Tom visited their local yarn supplier, only to learn that custom orders were backlogged. Emma called a small dye shop across town, Dye and Do Lab, hoping for a miracle. The owner, Marisol, agreed to rush a small batch of charcoal wool, but warned, it needs at least 24 hours to set and dry properly. That left just enough time if everything went smoothly. As evening arrived, Sarah and Tom carried wet skeins into the living room, spreading them on towels and propping them on drying racks. Emma worked late into the night, finishing stitches on existing orders and printing shipping labels. Sarah's hands ached, but she traced each loop with a sense of purpose. Every stitch meant warmth for a customer and security for her family. The next afternoon, as the final charcoal skeins hung nearly dry, Tom and Sarah knitted through the remaining hours. By early evening, all new hats and scarves, 200 in total, were complete and boxed. The courier arrived just before closing, whisking away their day's work. Relief and triumph shimmered in Sarah's eyes. They had met the challenge head-on, but the moment of celebration was cut short. Early the next morning, Sarah's phone pinged with an urgent email from the Seattle podcast host. Production says there was a glitch in the live stream. Your interview audio is missing, and downloads of the episode failed. We're re-airing next week, but your initial surge might fade. Sarah's breath caught. The missed exposure could cost them hundreds of potential customers. She stared at the screen, the weight of disappointment settling in her chest. Emma appeared behind her, reading over her shoulder. "We'll adapt," Emma said firmly. "We can run our own live stream, share our story directly." Tom nodded, rolling up his sleeves. "We've come this far. We won't let technical hiccups stop us." As Sarah set her jaw and reached for her needles, she realized the podcast had been a chance, but their real strength lay in the unbreakable bond they'd knitted together. No glitch, no supply shortage, no setback could unravel that. Taking a steadying breath, Sarah prepared to turn another obstacle into opportunity, one stitch, one live stream, one heartfelt message at a time. Sarah blinked at the error message on her laptop screen. Audio upload failed. The Seattle podcast's glitch felt like a punch to her gut. She had anticipated the surge in orders that never came. Emma, reading over her shoulder, exhaled sharply. "Mom, we need Plan B." Sarah nodded, gathering her wits. "You're right. Let's host our own live stream tomorrow evening." That afternoon, the Andrews household buzzed with urgent activity. Tom refitted their modest dining room into a makeshift studio, clearing the table, draping a neutral-colored backdrop, and arranging a soft lamp to highlight Sarah's knitting nook. Emma researched live stream platforms, finally choosing a free service that would let them broadcast to existing followers and invite new viewers. They crafted a simple graphic live from Andrew's home behind the stitches and posted it across social media channels with countdown reminders. By dusk, Sarah found herself seated at the improvised studio desk, a stack of finished hats and scarves beside her. The scent of lavender sachets she'd tucked inside each box mingled with the faint aroma of freshly brewed tea. Her heart fluttered. This was their moment to reclaim the narrative. Emma adjusted the camera angle, ensuring the focus was on Sarah's hands as she demonstrated the signature cable knit pattern. Tom hovered nearby, ready to manage any technical hiccups. As the clock struck 700 p.m., Emma clicked Go Live. A small but growing audience greeted them. "Finally, so glad you're doing this. I love your scarves. Can't wait to see behind the scenes." Sarah took a steadying breath. "Hello, everyone," she began, voice warm. "I'm Sarah Andrews, and this is my daughter, Emma. We intended to share our story on a Seattle podcast, but technical difficulties intervened. Instead, we're here, knitting together in real time." Over the next hour, Sarah guided viewers through the creation of a cozy fingerless, glove casting on stitches, explaining the importance of gauge, and weaving in the story behind each loop. Emma interjected with background details how orders had grown gradually, the duo and husband effort to manage production, and the origin of Stitched with Love. Comments surged. "Your story is so inspiring. Can I order a pair of those gloves? Mom, we need more colors." Sarah smiled at Emma's prompt, then held up the completed glove. "We'll make this in charcoal, teal, and midnight blue. Each batch will support a small local charity." Tom nodded from off camera, proud as a peacock. By the time the live stream ended, they'd answered dozens of questions and shared heartfelt gratitude. Emma counted 20 new orders in the first 20 minutes. Tom leaned forward, clapping his hands. "That was amazing." Sarah exhaled, exhaustion and exhilaration mingling on her face. "We turned a glitch into an opportunity," she said quietly. Over the next week, Stitched with Love saw steady growth. The charity collaboration announcement resonated. Customers appreciated that a portion of proceeds supported food pantries and after-school programs. Even without the Seattle podcast, word spread via social shares. "Watch Sarah knit live, so real and inspiring." Local media noticed too. A small feature ran in a regional newspaper with a headline reading, "Knitting Through Challenges, How One Family Revived a Dream." Yet as autumn deepened and orders amplified, new challenges emerged. One evening, as Sarah finished a final shawl for an order due the next morning, she realized she was nearly out of her most popular merino blend, the one that had sold out faster than she'd anticipated. She climbed into her car to drive to the yarn supplier at 9:30 p.m., only to find the store shuttered and a sign taped to the door. "Closed for inventory, reopen Monday." Panic nipped at her heart. Another week without that wool meant orders unfulfilled and disappointed customers. Back home, she found Tom tinkering with his final car job of the night. "They closed early," she said, voice tight. He frowned. "Maybe we can work with a different supplier. Ask around for recommendations." Emma, checking social media messages, pulled up a friend's suggestion. "There's a small mill upstate that does custom dye runs. They take 2 weeks, but if we adjust our timeline, it might work." Sarah pressed her fingers to her temples. 2 weeks is too long. Emma met her gaze. "How about we blend existing yarns, mix charcoal and navy to approximate the merino?" Sarah exhaled. "We'll test a small batch tonight." They gathered leftover skeins in the living room and began experimenting. Under the warm glow of the table lamp, Sarah wound charcoal and navy together into a single strand, knitting a quick swatch. As the first row formed, the mixture created a deep, rich gray almost identical to the discontinued color. Sarah held it to the light. "This works," she murmured. Tom clapped and Emma grinned. Order fulfilled. The following weekend, Stitched with Love hosted a small booth at an autumn craft festival. Tables gleamed with neatly folded sweaters, scarves, and gloves. Sarah demonstrated knitting techniques on a miniature wooden loom, narrating for an eager crowd. Emma processed orders electronically, handing receipts and sharing donation updates. Tom coordinated logistics, unloading boxes, keeping supplies stocked. A cheerful couple purchased 2 sets as pre-holiday gifts. A group of college students posed for a selfie with Sarah, captioned, "Knitting Through Life's Twists." Amid the festival hum, Sarah noticed a local boutique owner, Mrs. Dalton, studying their display. Mrs. Dalton approached, voice warm. "Your work is stunning, Sarah. I'd love to carry a small collection in my shop this winter. How soon can you deliver 20 sweaters?" Sarah's eyes widened. 20? We can have them ready within 3 weeks if we source extra hands. Mrs. Dalton nodded, exchanging business cards. As she departed, Sarah exhaled a laugh of disbelief. 20 sweaters, she repeated. Emma's phone buzzed, another bulk inquiry. This one from a New York-based interior designer who wanted 50 throw blankets for a winter event. Their business had grown beyond their wildest hopes. That night, the apartment felt both triumphant and precarious. Orders soared, but so did production demands. Sarah's fingers ached. and she found herself knitting deep into the night, sacrificing sleep to meet deadlines. Emma juggled campus assignments and customer service, while Tom shuffled between the garage and packaging station. The family had come so far, but exhaustion and the looming holiday season threatened to unravel them. On the eve of the big sweater order due date, Sarah sat alone at the kitchen island, a half-finished cardigan draped over her lap. She looked at her reflection in the coffee pot's glass lines of worry etched around her eyes, eyelashes dark with fatigue. Emma entered, rubbing her temples. "Mom, it's almost midnight. Let me finish the seaming tomorrow morning. You need rest." Sarah closed her eyes, tears pricking the corners. "I'm afraid if I slow down, I'll let everyone down." Emma placed a gentle hand on her mother's arm. "We're a team. You don't have to carry this alone." For the first time in days, Sarah allowed herself to nod. She handed Emma the cardigan and climbed the stairs, pulling her quilt tight. As she drifted into sleep, she realized that their greatest challenge wouldn't be production demands or supply shortages. It would be balance, nurturing each other, even as they chased a dream. The next dawn brought the final push. Emma seamed the last sleeve. Tom sewed on wooden buttons, and Sarah wove in loose yarn ends. By mid-morning, 20 winter-ready sweaters were boxed and labeled for Mrs. Dalton. A second courier arrived with 50 bulky blankets, soft wool that Sarah had dyed in shades of slate and cream. As Tom hauled boxes onto the porch, Emma posted a quick video telling followers, holiday gifts shipped. Their online store glowed with that familiar, warmth new testimonials, glowing 5-star reviews, and a small green button, reading "Donate a hat," that Sarah insisted they keep for customers who wanted to give to those in need. That evening, under a canopy of twinkling deck lights, the Andrews gathered for a quiet dinner to celebrate, meeting their biggest orders yet and ensuring a warm holiday for their children's school charity drive. Laughter filled the air as they recounted festival anecdotes and planned a brief, much-needed weekend getaway. Sarah looked at Tom and Emma, her eyes bright. "We did it together," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Emma reached across the table, squeezing her mother's hand. "Always," but as the family reveled in their triumph, a single email arrived, subject line, "Boutique buyer concern." Heart pounding, Sarah opened it to read a curt message. The Upstate Mills dye batch had yielded a slight color variation. The Ocean Breeze gloves shipped last week were a touch too light for retail display. Boutique returns would be processed if replacements couldn't ship immediately. Sarah's breath caught. The boutique's holiday display depended on consistency. If they couldn't correct the color fast, their hard-won credibility might unravel just as rapidly. Sarah pressed her hand to her chest. The holiday season loomed with promises and perils entwined. But looking at her family's determined faces around the table, she resolved to face this new setback as she always had, together, one careful stitch at a time. Sarah's heart pounded as she read the terse email the Ocean Breeze gloves sent to Mrs. Dalton's boutique were slightly lighter than the approved swatch. The boutique threatened returns unless replacements arrived within a week. A chill settled over the Andrews kitchen, where holiday lights twinkled incongruously. Tom set down his fork, eyes wide with concern. Emma's face paled, her laptop forgotten beside her. "We can't afford returns," Sarah whispered, swallowing hard. Every glove represented hours of knitting, dye expenses, and precious time. If they lost that order, their boutique partnership and reputation would take a severe hit. But the boutique's deadline, Christmas Eve sales loomed too close. Sarah rose from her chair, folding her hands in front of her. "We'll fix this. We have to." Immediately, she and Emma pored over their production notes and dye recipes. The gloves had come from the Upstate Mills hand-dyed batch number 47, which, Marisol had warned, could vary a shade when temperatures dropped. Sarah dug out extra skeins of the original color from her workshop closet, enough for 30 new gloves. But gloves sold out twice over. Clearly, they needed fresh yarn. Emma dialed Marisol's number in the dye shop. Marisol, it's Emma Andrews. We need to re-dye another batch 20 pairs in exact ocean breeze. Our boutique client Emma's voice wavered. Okay, Marisol replied after a brief pause. I'll run a small batch today, but the dye vats are closing at 4. I need your yarn by midday. Sarah and Emma exchanged determined glances. We'll be there by 10. Sarah tucked gloves into a reusable tote as Emma grabbed skeins and paperwork. By 9:30 a.m., they parked outside Dye and Do Lab. Inside, Marisol greeted them with a nod. If this batch comes out right, I'll send samples to Mrs. Dalton myself. Sarah placed the skeins on the counter. Thank you. She met Marisol's eyes, gratitude and exhaustion mingling. We need to get this right. While Marisol heated dye baths, Sarah and Emma double-checked their packaging supplies back at home. Tom scrambled to finish the final batch of sweaters for another boutique, a bright silver gray cardigan, underpinning his confidence in Sarah's solutions. But even as the dye soaked into the wool, Sarah worried, what if Marisol's correction still wasn't precise? Hours later, Marisol's assistants carried wet skeins to the drying rack. The color swirled in gentle gradients, true teal waves dancing across each thread. Marisol's practiced hand held one strand to the light. Look, she said, it matches our original darker shade. Relief washed over Sarah's face, tears of gratitude pricking at her eyes. Thank you. Tom arrived at home just as Sarah and Emma returned. The living room served as a makeshift drying station again, but this time with hope lingering in the air. By late afternoon, dry gloves in hand, Sarah sat at her nubby oak desk, fingers flying through the yarn as Emma printed return shipping labels and updated the boutique on the replacement timeline. Gloves will ship overnight for Christmas Eve arrival. On Monday morning, a flurry of packages went out. Sarah's emotions roiled between elation that they met the deadline and exhaustion from days that felt like weeks. Her resilience, her daughter's tenacity, and Tom's unwavering support had carried them through. That afternoon, Sarah received another email, this one from their Chicago boutique partner. We love the corrected ocean. Breeze gloves and appreciate your rapid response. We'd like to expand our order 50 scarves to match the gloves in the same color. Can you accommodate? Her breath caught as she read the line. Relief and nervous excitement washed through her. We can, she whispered. Though her mind whirled, 50 scarves meant at least 2 weeks of nonstop knitting, especially with winter temperatures slowing dry times. Emma appeared at her side. We'll do it, she said firmly. Consider it done. Sarah nodded, drawing upon the same determination that had mended the gloves. That night, as the family sat around the living room wrapped in their own knit creations, Tom playfully draped a teal scarf around Sarah's neck. You saved the day again, he said. Sarah smiled tiredly and reached for Emma's hand. The room glowed softly with string lights, the aroma of pine-scented candles soothing their nerves. We did this together, Sarah said. Emma squeezed her mother's hand, gratitude and love shining in her eyes. But as snow began to drift outside their window, Sarah's phone buzzed with a new notification, a direct message from a high-end boutique in Paris. We saw your story online. Interested in a limited run for our next winter collection? Let's talk details. Sarah's breath hitched. Paris meant a whole new scale, new challenges, and possibilities she'd never dared imagine. She looked around at her family, at Tom's steady presence and Emma's encouraging smile, and realized their journey was far from over. Another storm of orders, another whirlwind of production lay ahead. Yet they had learned that with every dropped stitch, every dye bath mishap, and every emotional hurdle, their family's bonds tightened and their resolve grew stronger. As Sarah set her phone aside, she made a quiet promise they would knit their way through this next chapter, together, one deliberate stitch at a time. Winter's early dusk settled over the Andrews household as Sarah Andrews sat at her writing desk, the Paris boutique's message glowing on her phone. Her heart fluttered at the thought of sending handmade scarves across the Atlantic, but doubt chased the excitement. Could they manage production at this scale? In the kitchen, Tom unloaded groceries from a paper bag. "Paris, huh?" he said, checking his phone. "This could be huge." Emma appeared at the stove, stirring spaghetti sauce. "It is huge," she agreed, "but we faced bigger challenges." That evening, the three huddled around the kitchen table. Maps, yarn swatches, and spreadsheets spread out like tools for a new venture. Sarah displayed the Paris boutique's email. They wanted a limited run of 100 scarves, luxury merino yarn in deep charcoal, frost gray, and navy, each featuring the seaside cable pattern that had become their signature. Delivery was due in 4 weeks, just in time for Valentine's Day promotions in Europe. Tom ran fingers through his hair. "We'll need help. I can't knit 100 scarves alone." Emma's eyes brightened. "I've spoken with Mrs. Delgado. She can handle 15 scarves a week in her backyard workshop. Plus, I found 2 local knitters on that crafting forum. We can pay them a fair wage." Sarah inhaled, relief mingling with gratitude. "Okay, let's coordinate schedules. We'll pay up front for materials, and I'll work the final assembly and quality control." Over the next morning, they set the plan in motion. Tom drove to the wholesale yarn supplier and ordered enough luxury merino color blends precisely matched to their Paris swatches. Emma negotiated an agreement with 2 freelance knitters asking for samples before committing to large orders. And Sarah sketched a work calendar, 10 scarves a week for her own knitting, 15 outsourced, plus another 20 finished by Mrs. Delgado's group, and Tom's own evenings dedicated to tagging each piece with branded labels and handwritten notes. By the end of the first week, Mrs. Delgado and the freelance knitters had sent back initial samples. Sarah inspected each seaside cable, its textured waves running like whispered promises of coastal breezes. A few were slightly too loose or had minor gauge inconsistencies, but with Sarah's guidance photos, video calls, written notes, they tweaked patterns and tightened stitches. Emma's encouragement flowed through text messages. "You all are amazing. Paris is going to love these." As snow blanketed their street, Sarah worked through long nights. Her fingers glided through yarn, shaping each cable with precision. Her thoughts drifting to Emily's college concerns, balance between classes and work, friendships tested by distance, dreams of a career beyond small-town life. Sarah longed to see her daughter thrive, but now, sending her scarves to Paris felt like sending a piece of their shared story across the world. One Wednesday afternoon, Sarah received an email from the Chicago boutique. "Now a steadfast partner. Your sweaters sold out within 2 days. Congratulations. We'd like to increase our order to 30 more by next month." Tom whooped with delight in the living room, knocking over a chair. Emma beamed. The choir of success even amid the Paris challenge lifted Sarah's spirits. She traced her finger over the words, imagining each sweater draped in cozy cashmere on Midwest shoppers. Yet as they celebrated, time slipped away. 3 weeks had passed, and the production pace remained frantic. On a mid-February morning, Sarah stirred her coffee and grimaced at the digital calendar. It was already the week before Valentine's Day. Their Paris shipment had to leave in 7 days. She sketched out one final push, a marathon knitting session that night. "I'll finish 10 more scarves," she announced, steeling herself. Emma watched with concern as Sarah's knuckles whitened around her needles. "Mom, you need to pace yourself. Remember last month your wrist was swollen for days?" Sarah offered a tired smile. "I've got to do this." That night, Sarah perched under a floor lamp, knitting needles dancing as if in a trance. Tom paused at the doorway, clutching a small bottle of anti-inflammatory cream. "Here," he said softly, placing it beside her. "Promise me you'll use it if it hurts." She nodded, absorbing his care. Around midnight, Sarah felt a stabbing pinch in her right hand. Her palm stiffened. She gritted her teeth but refused to stop. Another stitch slipped, and she pressed firmly on her wrist, wincing. Watching her daughter's concern, Sarah realized the price of their ambition. "I see it," she whispered. "Thank you." She set the scarf aside and tried the cream, flexing her wrist slowly. Pain radiated but dulled under the ointment's warmth. She took in a steadying breath. "I'll finish tomorrow," she said, though the calendar urged her onward. The next day, Mrs. Delgado's team dropped off 20 scarves. Sarah inspected them, her eyes both proud and critical. Some edges weren't blocked crisply, some cables weren't uniform. She carefully steamed and pressed each piece, then smoothed out errant stitches with practiced fingers. By evening, the pile of finished scarves, 30 total, sat ready for packaging. That night, Emma set up a video call with the Paris boutique buyer, Madame Lefebvre. Under dim light, Sarah held up a charcoal seaside cable scarf, its soft waves rippling gently in her hands. Madame Lefebvre, an elegant woman in her 50s with a sharp Parisian accent, examined every detail on the screen. "Magnifique," she murmured. These scarves evoked the sea's memory in the winter. A thrill surged through Sarah. "We will ship by midnight," she promised. But as the call ended and they loaded the final boxes into Tom's truck, Sarah realized the suitcase labeled Chicago sweaters still sat half-packed on the living room couch. The Chicago boutique expected 30 new sweaters by the end of the month, just 10 days away. The Andrews had met one challenge, but now stood on the cusp of another. That Thursday evening, amidst flurries of snow outside, Sarah and Emma sat cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by partially knitted sweaters and skeins of yarn. Their breaths formed small clouds in the heated room. Emma rubbed her hands together. "How are we going to finish these before the end of the month?" she asked quietly. Sarah picked up a skein of silver gray merino and held it close. "We'll figure it out together." But as she picked up her needles, the weight of unfinished orders pressed on her shoulders. Another marathon lay ahead, another test of endurance. And as the wind rattled the windows, Sarah wondered if their bonds, their shared determination, could truly weather the next storm of deadlines and demands. The morning light slanted through the slatted blinds, illuminating the mountain of half-finished sweaters in the Andrews living room. 30 soft silver gray merino cardigans waited for their sleeves and final cable. Details an immense task for the dwindling days before the Chicago boutique's deadline. Sarah's right wrist throbbed from the previous stretch of marathon knitting, but she refused to slow. She picked up her needles, the familiar click-clack both comforting and torturous. Tom appeared with mugs of strong coffee. "Take it easy, Sarah," he urged, sliding a steaming cup across the ottoman. "Emily can handle the afternoon knitting. Give your wrist a rest." Sarah shook her head. "I'll help," she insisted. Emma, earbuds in, was already hunched over a laptop in the corner, analyzing last night's sales data. She looked up, exhaustion shadowing her eyes. "Mom, if you push too hard," Sarah cut her off gently. "I'll be fine. Just keep assembling when I finish a sweater." By mid-morning, the living room's floor was littered with needles, yarn fragments, and measuring tape. A tick of urgency echoed with each passing hour. Screensaver reminders on Emma's phone counted down days, hours, minutes until the January 31st deadline. Yet, in the midst of chaos, the Andrews shared a quiet solidarity. When Sarah's hand cramped, Tom took over, knitting the last row of a sleeve while she sipped tea. When Emma's eyes grew tired scanning for typos in shipping labels, Sarah massaged her daughter's shoulders, an echo of the comfort they had stitched together over the past months. On the third evening, as Sarah wove in loose ends on her 7th sweater, Emma burst into tears. "Mom, I can't keep my grades up and pack orders. I have an exam in 2 days." Panic rippled through Sarah's chest. She pulled Emma into a hug. "We'll figure this out. The business will still be here after your exam." With a deep breath, she hatched a quick plan. Tom would reach out to his cousin Marcus, who had once knelt next to a pregnant Sarah in Sunday school to learn basic knitting. They asked Marcus to join them. By Friday, Marcus sat between Sarah and Tom, his long, sturdy fingers looping yarn beside theirs. Together, the three knitters finished 5 cardigans that night, voices low as they plotted the final push. Saturday dawned gray and chilly. Emily took her final exam, leaving Tom, Sarah, and Marcus alone among boxes of half-knit garments. The three worked in unison, Sarah on sleeves, Tom on collars, and Marcus weaving in ends. When Marcus faltered over a dropped stitch, Sarah guided his fingers back, their laughter echoing with relief. Marcus grinned at her. "I forgot how soothing this is." His unexpected ease with the needles and gentle encouragement of Sarah once a stranger, now a collaborator, kindled a curious warmth in her chest, separate from familial pride. By Sunday morning, 25 of the 30 cardigans were complete, but the clock ticked closer to the deadline. Tom's phone buzzed. Urgent packaging supplies delayed due to weather. Their final bundle of boxes would now arrive a day late. A collective breath caught in Sarah's throat. Without boxes, they couldn't ship to Chicago on time. She fought the rising tide of panic. "We'll improvise boxes from the garage. Remember those old moving cartons?" she said, determined. Tom nodded, rushing off to scavenge usable cartons, while Sarah and Marcus huddled over needle and thread. That evening, Emma returned victorious from her exam, her cheeks flushed. She found her mother knitting a final collar in the dim light and Marcus humming beside her. Relief softened her gaze. "I aced it," she whispered. Sarah embraced her daughter, tears of pride in her eyes. "I knew you would." But as Emma helped fold the finished sweaters into repurposed boxes, she hesitated over one pale gray piece that seemed slightly smaller than the others. Holding it up, she frowned. "This one, did we use a different gauge?" Sarah's chest tightened. True, a slight misstep in counting rows had created a smaller chest measurement. Another delay. With only 24 hours left, they would need to replace it. Around them, the living room crackled with tension. Tom unpacking new boxes, Emma measuring fringes, Marcus untangling a snarled skein. Sarah placed a firm hand on the missized cardigan and took a steadying breath. "I'll take care of it." She unraveled the piece back into yarn, her fingers nimbly undoing stitches, and began knitting again, the cable pattern emerging with familiar rhythm. The next morning, as dawn light crept through the curtains, Sarah finished the corrected cardigan. Tom snapped photos, ensuring each label was properly sewn. Emma double-checked shipping labels, while Marcus assembled sturdy cartons with their names printed in elegant script, stitched with love by Sarah Andrews. By mid-afternoon, 10 long days after the Paris request, 30 perfectly matched sweaters lay sealed and ready. Tom loaded the final boxes into his truck and placed a protective hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Let's go," he said. Sarah exhaled, her voice thick with exhaustion. "Let's do it." They reached the courier office with 20 minutes to spare. The clerk scanned each box, nodding when he saw the large Fragile Sweater stickers. As the truck pulled away, the Andrews stood on the sidewalk, arms wrapped around one another. The chill in the air felt exhilarating, a reminder that their persistence had prevailed. As they drove home, Emma glanced at her mother's weary yet triumphant expression. "We did it," she murmured. Sarah smiled, eyes shining. Together? But just as they rounded the corner, Sarah's phone buzzed with an incoming text. "Urgent Paris boutique reports missing gloves in transit. Could you resend? Customer complaints." Her heart sank, pesto of dread settling in her stomach. They had met one critical deadline, only to face another urgent call. Yet in her daughter's steady gaze and her husband's reassuring squeeze of her hand, Sarah found the resolve to continue. Looking at the darkened sky, she whispered, one stitch at a time, already bracing for the next obstacle. A week after the Chicago sweater delivery, snow still blanketed the Andrews Street. Sarah's heart tightened as she read the urgent text from the Paris boutique, 5 gloves missing from shipment. Immediate replacements needed or order canceled. The burgundy and teal Ocean Breeze gloves were long sold out, and the boutique's February window display hinged on those pairs. Sarah felt the familiar spiral of panic, another transatlantic crisis demanding immediate action. Inside their cozy living room, Sarah, Tom, and Emma convened in the early morning light. Tom set down a steaming mug of coffee. "We'll get through this," he said, voice steady. "Let's inventory what we have." Emma pulled out the dwindling teal skeins. Only enough remained to knit 2 gloves far short of the 5 needed. "We'll need to dye more," she said, tone urgent. Sarah nodded, exhaustion lining her face. "I'll call Marisol now," she said, already dialing the dye shop. Marisol answered on the first ring. "Sarah, I was expecting you about the Chicago sweaters. Congratulations." Sarah forced a small smile between explanations. Marisol listened and then replied, "I can run a small teal batch today, but we'll need to rinse and dry quickly. Come by before 10. Emma drove Sarah through slick roads to Dye and Do Lab, where Marisol and her assistant worked efficiently, draping freshly dyed skeins on portable drying racks. This time, Marisol tested each strand meticulously. "These are perfect deep teal without that faint green cast," she said. Relief washed over Sarah as she wrapped the delicate yarn in her arms. Back home, Sarah knit the first glove with determined precision. Tom measured and cut labels while Emma updated the shipping manifest. By late afternoon, they had 5 pairs finished and boxed. At the courier office, the clerk stamped each package for express international delivery. Tom pressed a final glove into Sarah's hands. "You did it," he said. Sarah exhaled, gratitude and fatigue mingling. "We did it together." That night, as Sarah tucked herself into bed, her phone buzzed once more. Paris boutique replacements received. "Thank you." Eager for spring collection samples, tears of relief pricked Sarah's eyes. She pressed her hand to her chest, the steady rhythm of her heartbeat a testament to another crisis overcome. The next morning, Emma and Sarah reviewed sales numbers and boutique feedback. The spring collection Request 50 light cashmere scarves with floral motifs sparked excitement. But cashmere yarn was expensive, and they needed to ensure profitability. Emma crunched the numbers. "If we charge a premium for handcrafted cashmere, we can cover costs and pay helping knitters fairly." Sarah nodded, fueled by renewed confidence. In the following weeks, the Andrews home pulsed with creativity and collaboration. Sarah designed a simple cable and lace scarf pattern. Emma sourced sustainable cashmere and crafted elegant product descriptions. Tom synchronized deliveries and managed finances. They brought in 2 more local knitters, Sophia and Hector, whose nimble fingers kept pace with Sarah's intricate designs. By the first week of March, they completed 40 scarves and shipped 20 to Paris for pre-order reviews. Then came the email they had longed to see. Paris Boutique loves the spring line. Pre-order of 50 scarves confirmed for April delivery. Clients are raving about the craftsmanship. Sarah's eyes welled with pride. In the kitchen, she and Emma clinked teacups. "We made it," Sarah whispered. Emma squeezed her mother's hand, tears of joy glinting. "You made it, Mom." Yet, amid the elation, another seed of uncertainty sprouted. With Paris and Chicago orders secured, Sarah wondered how to balance their burgeoning business with family life. Emma's final semester capstone project loomed. Tom's part-time mechanic schedule still left him exhausted, and Sarah's own hands bore tiny scars from repeated knitting. One afternoon at the neighborhood cafe where they celebrated small successes, Emma reached across the table. "Mom, what if we find a studio space somewhere we can separate work and home? We're outgrowing the apartment." Sarah studied her daughter's hopeful face and then glanced at Tom, who offered an encouraging nod. That evening, the Andrews gathered in their living room, surrounded by yarn baskets and finished scarves. Snow had melted into the first spring thaw, and a robin's song drifted through the open window. Sarah took a deep breath, reflecting on how far they'd come from that pink slip to creating a family business with international reach. She looked at Tom and Emma, the 2 pillars who had supported her through every knot and challenge. A studio space, she echoed, voice soft but determined. Let's explore it. Just as they began to discuss neighborhood listings, Sarah's phone buzzed again. A direct message on social media from a popular lifestyle influencer. Love your story. Would you consider a feature on our YouTube channel? We have 200K subscribers and focus on small artisans. Sarah's heart raced. Another opportunity, but larger than any they had faced before. As she stared at the message, the room held its breath, recognizing that yet another pivotal moment beckoned. And so, on the cusp of new expansion, Sarah, Tom, and Emma shared a determined glance. They knew that each step forward would bring fresh challenges and possibilities, yet, woven through every twist and turn, was the unbreakable thread of their family's unity. Spring's warmth blossomed across the neighborhood as Sarah Andrews, Tom, and Emma drove through streets dotted with for rent signs. Their goal: find a small studio space and actual workshop separate from home, where they could create, meet clients, and preserve their family's sanity. Each listing they toured offered bright windows or outdated shelving, but most were either too expensive or too cramped. Emma's eyes flicked between dusty art studios and bare-bones storefronts. Tom ran his fingers through his hair, brow furrowed with concentration. Sarah tried to stay patient. They had outgrown their living room's crowded chaos, but suitable spaces seemed elusive. On a sunny Thursday afternoon, they found themselves in front of a converted garage at the edge of town. The landlord, a kindly woman named Mrs. Benton, led them inside a 500-square-foot room with high ceilings, exposed brick, and a utility sink in one corner. Natural light spilled through large windows, and two small office nooks sat at the back. The rent was higher than their current space fair share, but Mrs. Benton offered a 3-month grace period for renovations. As Sarah ran her hand along the rough brick wall, she felt a surge of possibility. "This is it," she whispered. Tom and Emma exchanged excited glances. By that evening, they'd signed the lease, and a fresh chapter had begun. Over the next week, the Andrews household turned into a whirlwind of packing and planning. Sarah enlisted help from Mrs. Delgado, and their two freelance knitters, Sophia and Hectordo, continue production at home, ensuring that no orders slipped through the cracks. Meanwhile, Tom and Emma painted the new studio's walls in calming slate gray and pastel teal, Emma's suggestion, to echo the brand's ocean breeze motif. They set up sturdy work tables, installed adjustable lighting, and arranged yarn storage bins along one exposed wall. Sarah labeled shelves merino blends, spring, summer, fall, winter. When the last box of yarn was unpacked, Tom wiped his hands on a rag and surveyed their handiwork. "Feels like home," he said softly. That evening, the family gathered in the empty studio for a simple housewarming. Sarah laid out a small cheese plate and brewed tea in the kitchenette, just a hot plate and a mini fridge. They toasted to their journey from a cramped apartment to a fully functioning workshop that would soon host knitting classes and pop-up events. As they laughed and shared memories, Emma glimpsed a stack of shipping boxes piled near the door. "It's time," she said, pointing to her phone. The YouTube influencer's inquiry had only grown more urgent. Film the stitched with love story in their brand new space. The next morning, they prepared for the video shoot. Emma liaised with the influencer's production assistant, scheduling a midday arrival and confirming camera angles and brawl shots. Sarah selected her favorite projects: a half-knit sweater draped over a mannequin, a basket of sea glass-colored yarns, and a finished scarf pinned to a corkboard with the note, "Handmade for Emma." Tom dusted the studio floors and tested the lighting for glare. By 1:00 a.m., the crew arrived: cameraman Alex carrying a tripod and softbox, sound technician Priya with a boom mic, and the influencer herself, Sophie Lane, known for her warm demeanor and enthusiasm for small artisans. Sophie greeted them with a hug. "Your story inspired me," she said. Sarah offered a shy smile. As the crew set up, Sophie asked Sarah to pace through a normal workday. "Let's start with you opening the door." she said into the camera mic. Sarah flipped the open sign to closed filming, then opened the glass door for effect, sunlight glinting on the yarn bins behind her. The crew captured every detail: Emily measuring yarn on the long work table, Tom labeling shipping boxes, and Sarah's nimble fingers knitting a cable stitch. Sophie interviewed Sarah on camera. "What kept you going during those early months after losing your job?" "Every stitch taught me patience," Sarah replied, her voice steady. But it was Emma's faith and Tom's support that unfurled the path forward. They filmed Sarah teaching a mini knitting lesson to 3 local seniors invited as Sophie's guests, who laughed as Sarah corrected their tension. Emma recorded the scene on her phone, posting a live stream snippet live from our new studio knitting our way to success. Comments appeared in real time: "Love the new space," "Inspiring story," "I need that teal scarf." As the shoot wrapped, Sophie held Sarah's hands. "Your family's resilience is genuine. I can't wait to share this." The influencer's crew packed up, leaving behind charged batteries and a stack of SD cards brimming with footage. Sarah exhaled, exhaustion and exhilaration mingling. "We did it," she whispered. Over the next week, the YouTube feature went live, Knitting to New Heights: The Andrews Family Story, complete with emotional interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, and a final shot of Sarah, Tom, and Emma standing in the new studio, framed by pastel yarn bins. Within hours, website traffic soared. Overnight, they gained hundreds of new followers on social media. Customer inquiries flooded their inbox. "Do you ship internationally? How can I learn to knit like Sarah? I love your studio, can we visit?" Even local news outlets picked up the story. Small Town Knitters Workshop welcomes new students. Amid the excitement, Sarah felt a surge of pride tempered by concern. Rising demand meant ramping up production once again, requiring more help and tighter schedules. She watched as Emma fielded requests for studio tours and coordination of knitting classes with local libraries. Tom already juggled garage repairs and managing shipping logistics. As twilight fell and the house quieted, Sarah knelt beside her knitting basket and held a pair of unfinished gloves. The pulse of opportunity beat strongly, but she recognized that victory hinged on maintaining the harmony that had brought them here. Late one night, as Sarah tucked her needles away, Emma slipped into her room. "Mom, I saw a message from a local community center hoping to rent our studio for a fundraising event. They'd like us to teach a knitting workshop for underprivileged teens." Sarah's eyes glowed with excitement. "That's wonderful," she replied, voice soft. But behind her words, Sarah carried a quieter question. Could they balance expansion, family responsibilities, and giving back? The next morning, sunlight filtered through the new studio's windows as Sarah opened the service door. She inhaled the scent of fresh yarn and the faint smell of paint. Tom arrived with coffee for everyone. His daily ritual now moved to the studio. Emma carried her laptop, ready to plan the community workshop. Sarah settled at her desk, hand poised above her needles. She thought of the neighborhood teens, the seniors who'd attended her first lesson, the Paris and Chicago boutiques, and the countless customers who found warmth in her creations. As she cast on the first loop of a glove, Sarah felt the steady rhythm of purpose. Each stitch connected past struggles to future possibilities, strengthening threads between her, Emma, and Tom. With the studio's open windows framing a sky just tinting pink, she began knitting, its familiar click-clack, a promise that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would continue to face them together, one deliberate stitch at a time. Winter melted into spring, and the Andrews studio buzzed with a steady hum of creativity. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating rows of neatly labeled yarn bins and tables where local knitters, seniors, and curious neighbors gathered each morning. Across the street, the neighborhood community center displayed a poster advertising Sarah's upcoming Knitting for Change workshop for underprivileged teens, a testament to how far their small family venture had come. Inside the studio, Sarah sat at her favorite corner table, her needles moving through a skein of light gray cashmere as she tested a new lace pattern. Behind her, Emma organized materials for an afternoon session with high school students eager to learn basic stitches. Tom wheeled in a dolly laden with the week's outgoing orders: Paris-bound scarves, Chicago sweaters, and handcrafted mittens destined for a new boutique partnership in Boston. He paused at the door, sipping his coffee, and watched his wife's calm, focused expression, confident in her hands and heart. The Stitched with Love Signons, a spray-painted wooden board in their living room, now hung proudly above a display of finished garments. Sterling silver tags announced their cause. 10% of proceeds went to local charities, and a dozen donate a hat. Stickers invited customers to gift warmth to those in need. Each finished piece bore the subtle echo of Sarah's past: struggles, late shifts in the supermarket, nights spent worrying over unpaid bills, and a mother's yearning to reconnect with an ever-distant daughter. But those shadows had transformed into threads of resilience and love woven into every stitch. Emma slipped into her mother's lane of vision, checking a row of hand-knit baby blankets destined for the county hospital's neonatal unit. "Mom, the teens from last week's class just posted photos of their first finished scarves. Look how proud they are," she said, holding up her phone. Sarah smiled at the image of a group of bright-eyed teenagers seated in a library, each draping a newly knitted scarf around their shoulders. Their joy reminded Sarah of that first moment when her own daughter had believed in her knitting, sparking everything that followed. Across the studio, Tom joined the group of volunteer knitters, Mrs. Delgado, Sophia, and Hector, laughing as they compared yarn weights and shared design ideas. The small band of helpers had become an extended family, each bringing unique skills and quiet encouragement. The apartment they once shared, cluttered with yarn and half-finished sweaters, now felt a world away. Here, work and home coexisted in harmonia, living, breathing testament to their collective effort. Late afternoon brought a familiar routine. Sarah gathered her tools to close each knitting session. Emma wiped down work tables, and Tom restocked packaged orders on the shelving unit. The three paused at the studio's entrance as the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long golden shadows across the wooden floor. They stepped outside, the neighborhood's first mockingbirds chirping in nearby trees, and shared a moment of quiet reflection. "I remember when this was just our living room," Sarah said, fingers idly looping a strand of yarn. "Now we have a place where our whole community can gather." She glanced at Emma, who had grown into a poised, confident young woman, no longer the distant college student, but a partner and friend. "I'm proud of us," Sarah whispered. Tom wrapped an arm around both of them. "More than proud," he said. "You built this family, this business, and this space from the ground up." Emma rested her head against her mother's shoulder. "And we'll keep building new patterns, new workshops, new ways to give back." Her eyes sparkled with possibility. As dusk settled, the Andrews family lingered on the sidewalk, their laughter mingling with the evening breeze. In that shared warmth knows no deadline, no setback, no single stitch of doubt could unravel the tapestry they'd created. Each garment, each workshop, each shared moment had woven them closer, binding them to one another and to their community. With one final stretch, Sarah gathered her knitting basket and lifted her gaze to the horizon. The future lay before them, bright, unspooled, and waiting for their next careful stitches. And as the street lamps flickered on, they stepped back inside, ready for whatever challenges and triumphs tomorrow might bring. Always knitting hope, one thread at a time, Fired Woman and her daughter built a steady business,